Hey everybody, and welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Rabun,
I am Tiff Salcido.
and we are moving out of the dog days of the summer and coming up, into the last 4 months of the year, where the weather changes, not exactly right away. I don't know about you, Tiff, but it felt like the last couple of days have been the hottest of the summer so far, and it's been a pretty hot, but just you know, getting to I made the comment to my wife, she bought a dress and it was like a summery light white dress. And I said, well, you only have like 2 weeks to wear that. So she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, after Labor Day wearing white. She goes, I'm not worried. That's the South stuff. Nah, I'm not, and I'm like, okay, but how have you always where do you see like the end of the summer? What is your definition of the end of the summer?
When I have to go back to work, honestly, like the summertime, we're not historically very busy. There's always like
Hmm.
a lull in the first few months of the beginning of the new fiscal year, and you go from working like full time all the time to like here and there for a few months. So when my calendar starts to be full and I'm planning and trying to book hotels and rental cars and stuff, that's when I know my summer's over.
Yeah.
Um, I'm back in California, and it's really funny because, Mexico, we've had a really mild summer. Historically, there, it is so hot in the summer and humid, and we like just missed it. So right now, as a matter of fact, that the Mexico house, it's storming. It's thunderstorming
Hmm.
because we get all the monsoon moisture. So
Yeah.
it's actually raining, but it's also 99 degrees, which is
Mm,
that's normal summer weather.
yeah.
And here it's warm, but it's not humid. So it to me, I'm like it's really nice right now. But um, yeah, summertime is usually where I start to see it kind of wind down, is where my calendar is full, and that's starting next week. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of like cool stuff coming up. My oldest son is getting married, and so we have like his fiance's bridal showers coming up in a few months, and so we're planning for that. And so my mom is coming to visit. She's going to come and spend some time here, and so I went from like a whole lot of nothing to a whole lot of everything.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, okay, summer's coming. And, summer's coming to an end. It's time to get back to reality. And so um, the days are gonna start getting shorter, and it's gonna be hoodie weather soon, which I'm pretty excited about.
Can't wait.
Um, I bought a new puffy vest yesterday. I'm pretty excited about it. I had it on earlier today and was like, just kidding, it's too hot for the puffy vest. I'm a sucker for a puffy vest, let me tell you.
Hmm.
So that's what I see. Back to life as normal, and um, no more sleeping in. Time to get back on a schedule and be a productive member of society. It's time. So
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, I hear
So
you.
sad.
Yeah, it's a pickup. Yeah, absolutely. It's a pickup in work and staying busy and getting ready for gearing up for the traveling and meeting folks and getting your calendars filled and things like that. So it's yeah, I was just a lot of people say, Labor Day is the end of summer. But I think historically, growing up as a kid, it was always Labor Day was the end of the summer because that next day we were in school, right? And but school's starting so early these days for
Right.
I know there's some folks that were going back like the last week of July, and I'm just like, wow, but people school's starting to ramp up. My daughter's going to her last two classes she needs to get her certificate, and so that's starting up now, and so she's starting to get her school calendar together instead of sleeping in, and all those things like that. So yeah, it's just different people have those like Memorial Day is the beginning of summer, Labor Day is the end of summer, but I don't know. Growing up in San Francisco, every day was hoodie weather, right? And the days that weren't hoodie weather were usually in September and October. So it's just a conversation living up here in hot and hot Sacramento. It's a different conversation, So, we were
Yeah.
out we were wine tasting yesterday at this place called the Sugar Mill where we live, which is real cool. It's got a bunch of different um, tasting rooms from these different wineries around. And it used to be whenever we go there to pick up shipments, we're a wine club member there. It'd be packed. I mean, there'd just be tons of people there, and there was, you know, there wasn't as many people this time. I mean, the atrium was open, and there wasn't too many people that we didn't have to stand in line for anything, or there was spaces available, and it just kind of felt a little different, right? I mean, it was over 100 degrees, but it just got me thinking, what is the summer winding down, or is it just, I read something the other day that, Gen Z is not drinking as much wine or hard liquor anymore. They're drinking those, if they're drinking anything, they're drinking the White Claws and
Mhm.
those type of drinks. So it's just a different, it was just a different feel. And just this weekend just kind of made me think about that.
That's interesting because where like craft breweries, I know this is not like a secret to anybody who knows me, but I love like breweries. I
Hmm.
travel, that's like one of the first places I look for. And again, it's not always for the alcohol, but I just love the vibe, right? The social environment. People are talking to each other and they always have good food. Like breweries have
Yeah.
some of the best food. Their menus are so creative, not healthy, but creative.
Yeah.
um, and so I love that vibe, but I do see definitely a lean towards like craft brews and even seltzers. Seltzers are definitely
Yeah.
big. And so as I kind of go, and I'm not a beer drinker anymore. I used to love beer, but as I get older, I just can't. My body's just like, no, thank you. We don't like
Yeah.
this anymore.
Yeah.
My mouth likes it, but my body not so much. So um, I've moved a little bit more towards like the seltzers and the cocktails and it's I'm seeing more and more of them on menus. And so I
Yeah.
definitely think that there's a shift and wine is not as popular. I mean there's almost always like a red and a white option, like just
Hmm.
one red, one white, but you don't see a lot of wineless places
Yeah.
um and I don't think that a lot of people are going out as much
Yeah.
anymore. I feel
Yeah.
like maybe I I can't even begin to like go into the complexity of what out means, but outside is expensive. Like
Yeah.
really expensive. I found this out the hard way the other day. Like I came back and we made a Costco run and I went to Aldi and I had to like stock up on a bunch of stuff. Like I was out for like I don't even know, maybe 3 hours, and I spent like $700. I said, "What the freak?" And we didn't even go have a meal anywhere. We had that $1.50 Costco hot dog, but um, I just think that people don't have as much disposable income. The economy is starting to definitely like decline. Like things are getting more expensive, and so where people are going to have to cut corners is going to be in being out. And so
Yeah.
and young people even more so because they're like when we talk to Eric it's expensive to pay rent and gas and insurance and all of that stuff, and so if you've got just enough for your basic necessities, how do you go out and socialize?
Yeah. I've noticed that just playing playing out in bands and in bars and breweries and a lot of I mean we have a fan base of folks who like the music that we listen to. So we have a pretty consistent group of folks, when we go play. We just played on Saturday in downtown Sacramento.
Mhm.
But you didn't have as many, young folks out and about, like you said. I mean, just driving around, and even after the gig, I mean, we just played from 6 to 8, and even after that, just going to my daughter came with me, and so we stopped at Rick's Dessert Diner. If you've never been there, it's fantastic, right? And the line was long, but it was mostly families and folks our age, right? It just interesting, to see that. And I know things are expensive and there's limited income and things like that, but you know, I wonder how much of it maybe is also that, a lot of folks, we talk, I talk about in generational, when I, in generation classes, I mean, you have everything, you're self-contained, right? I mean, you have your pay-per-view, you have your internet, you have, your friends, the games. You don't have to go to the drive-in to see movies anymore, right? You don't have to go to the theater if you don't want to, except for like special events and, just even, when I was younger, I mean, just going out to people's houses, you wanted to hang out with them, you could go do that. And I don't know, it just seems different, right? Just even the idea of like just high school reunions, right? We try to put a reunion together and it's just we see each other on Facebook. And so it's almost like, well, I don't know how it was, before our generation, but you see all those movies, high school reunions. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in 20 years. And so that's the specialness of it. Nowadays, oh hey, I saw you guys went skiing last weekend. So how was that? Right. And it's just
Right.
like, so I wonder if it's lost a little bit of the specialness of being out and about, and you read things. I read an article not too long ago about this, um, about people being more lonely than any ever before, right? And there's a difference, right? I'm an introvert, but I have my core group of friends, right? And there's a difference between being introverted and being lonely, right? And so just wondering sometimes how people feel about the idea of going out and being social and connecting with people and how that's changed. And it might be financially, and also it might just be, I mean, I'm self-contained at home, and if I'm not enjoying the if I'm not enjoying the environment, I can always change the channel rather than have to leave a bar because some idiot's talking crap and wants to fight with somebody, right? And so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Well, too, there's like that whole social anxiety has been something that has come up a lot for the newer generations. And, maybe we interpreted that differently where, oh, we're just shy or maybe we're not super social. But I think that it's much easier, and this is not a blanket statement, so
Mm.
please don't take it as that. But um, I think that people socialize so much more through screens now than anything
Yeah,
else
yeah,
that now you're live and in person and it's awkward, and even if and by the way, like again, I'm going from my experience with my own kids in their generation. Eric has tons and tons of friends and they live in different states and different countries. So it's not like they can be like, hey, let's put the game down and let's all go meet at the pub or,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
They're all in different parts of the world. So their water cooler or their meeting spot or their social engagement is oftentimes through their digital interaction, which to each their own. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But, if I have to go out in public, I got to talk to people I've never talked to before. They're not my social circle. And,
right.
and do I have to fake the funk and try to act like a normal person, whatever that
Well,
means?
well, I don't know. Just think about Tiff. And I see that, and I feel like that's something that's happening. I mean, you hear, folks their age, they're dating less and less, right? They're not dating as much as we did, right, when we were their age, and people aren't getting married at the rate and things like that. And I wonder if some of that has to do with I don't know about you, Tiff, but I used to play till the streetlights came on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that old adage, but it was legitimately true. And I had a group of maybe about, you know, 10 10 people that we would congregate around my house, or we would play outside or go to the park across the railroad tracks, and we would or ride our bikes around or whatever it was, and we were always out. And so we were very close, but we didn't always get along, right? But we had to figure that out. If we were playing basketball and somebody got mad, you know, and we had 10 kids and you walked away and now we can't play basketball. Oh, come on, don't be like that. Just I'm sorry, man, let's keep playing. And maybe our conflict resolution skills had to be a little more refined based off of the necessity of we're out. It's if we, if we leave,
Mhm.
it's not like, that's my group. I need to figure that out because it's still 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
Right.
As opposed to, oh, if this guy's, being a jerk, I'm gonna log off or I'm gonna block him,
Hmm.
right? And I don't have to ever engage with him ever again if I don't want to, right? And it
Yeah.
just I wonder how much of a phenomenon that is and how much people even recognize that that's happening, right? There's, like you said, it's great to be able to have virtual friends and to keep up with family. And I think the the pandemic really highlighted the fact that we can do that, to an effect, but at what cost, right? At what cost in terms of the, our society and how we interact socially and how you see how our society is so fractured,
Hmm.
right? One of the things we're going to talk about today is, just some of these, new laws and the ways that people connect with each other and really trying to create that connection with families and with people. But, it seems like being virtual there it can be very helpful. I mean, I've had some wonderful coaching sessions virtually, right? And I have some really good friends that I like to, you know, I can connect with virtually, but is that the same as being in person, right? And I think people feel that, right? And I know I've said it before, but there's a stat that I use in my classes that 72% of Gen Z said that they prefer face-to-face communication at work. And most millennials or people that are our age, they shake their head. They're like, wow, really? What? Especially people our age and older, right? And
Hmm.
well, what do you mean? And I said, well, they say they prefer face-to-face communication at work. Well, they're always on their phones. Well, can you have a face-to-face conversation on your phone? No, what do you mean? I said, well, can you have a real-time synchronous conversation where we are having a conversation? You can see my face, you can see my expressions, you can see my hands, right? Is that something that we can do? Well, yeah. I mean, there's Skype and Snapchat and all those. I said, okay, so that's in real time. So that's face to face. I'm seeing your face, you're seeing my face. That's not face to face. So, and it's like, okay, well, what do you consider face to face? Yeah, well, what we're doing right now, yeah. I say so. All my life, I've considered face to face being here, but sharing the same energy in the same room with each other, right? And there's a different energy that comes with that, but through technology and just as the times have come, and moved forward, we have a different medium now to be able to have face to face conversations, right? So sometimes we ascribe words to actions and to meanings. And so face to face can be in person or virtual. But if you were raised like me, where face to face meant we were in person, your brain wants to reject the fact that virtual also equals face to face, right? And a lot of people, they get it. I had one person in Ventura County that wanted to fight me on it. I mean, it was legitimate. Started raising her voice, and they were upset. And I said, I understand, I get it. It to me inherently, when I think of face-to-face communication, it's us being in the room together, but also there's it's not right or wrong. It's just different than what we're used to. But how many people like change, right? And so it's it's just it's a different idea. So can we change the idea to being in person and virtual, right? Instead of saying face to face. So just just those nuances sometimes, but it's difficult. And you can see how strong that pull is with people who ascribe that idea of being in person, being social, and that there's something inherently wrong with folks who don't see it, but you can tell how strong it is.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because I am very fond of both in like in real life, but
Mhm.
also to me it feels the same like on a Zoom. And that's just maybe because I went hot and heavy during the pandemic. Like, we didn't teach classes, and now we're teaching classes on Zoom, which I had never done before. And
Yeah.
I just really embraced it because there was no other choice. Well, I mean, I could have chose poverty. Poverty was definitely a choice, but I've done that. Not a fan. Um, so I
Yeah.
needed to work, and I'm
Yeah.
like, if this is how we work, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But like my bestie lives far, far away from me, and we've got busy schedules, and we don't always have time to, connect in real life. But when we have little Zoom sessions, to me, it's just as meaningful and enjoyable, and as if we were at a cafe somewhere drinking coffee.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hilarious because a lot of times we'll be like, "Hey, do you want to meet for lunchtime and just chat?" We're like, "Yeah." And then it's 4 hours later, and
Yeah.
we're both like, "I gotta go to the bathroom so bad. I gotta go," but we don't want to like let go of
Yeah.
that moment because we're just so happy to share space with each other, even if
Yeah.
it's virtual.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know. I equate Zoom and this type of face to face to me is just as meaningful
Mhm.
as in person.
Yeah. And I mean, you can make it meaningful. You can, I
Yeah,
mean, my wife and my stepdaughter, they go shopping every week. And my
mhm,
stepdaughter lives in Georgia, right?
yeah,
So they are shopping and walking around the store, walking around where, Walmart or Aldi or wherever
yeah.
they are. And she's asking her about different prices and what should I get and things like that. And so they have a lot of quality time virtually and it works for them. I mean, they have no other choice, but like you said, they can be on the phone a couple hours a night, right? And
Mhm.
so it's for some folks that really does work. And I think a lot of people have found their community, virtually and have, either because of necessity or just because of comfort, being able to have that, connection when you're not in a physical form, right? We know introverts, being around people just drains your energy. Right? So, even extroverts, it lights you up unless you're dealing with difficult people, and then, then you need a Calgon bath, right? But just as I'm dating myself, right? Calgon, take me away. Do they even sell Calgon anymore?
They do. Do you want to hear a funny thing I used to say to my mom? So
Yeah.
being an 80s baby, that was the commercial, Calgon, take me away. So my
Yeah.
mom used to go take her Calgon baths, and she still remembers this. She One day she's like, "I'm gonna go take a bath and you kids leave me alone." We're like, "All right." So she's like, "Calgon, take me away." And I say, "Don't bring her back." And so that's still like one of the things in my family that gets brought up on a regular basis, how I
Yeah.
wanted the Calgon to take her away and never bring her back. Uh,
It's
sorry, mom.
funny.
Sorry, mom.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um,
But,
but yeah, Calgon is still out there, just FYI. I mean, there's other things that you can buy that are probably more luxurious, but Calgon is still there, taking people away, hopefully.
yeah, like a bath bomb, right? My wife likes a good bath bomb.
Lush has the best bath bombs and bath everything. Like you cannot put me in a Lush store. Um, I will buy it all. I
Yeah.
I convinced myself at one point that I could make my own artisan handmade soap. I bought all the stuff for it. That's my ADHD speaking, but I bought all the stuff during the pandemic to make. I was going to start a soap making empire.
Oh,
And I
do
did it
tell.
one time. I did it one time, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is a lot of work." And then I gave all the stuff away.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
just go to Lush. I'll just go to Lush and buy it. But they have some such there everything there is natural and it's handmade and it smells so amazing. For men, they have a men's line. We went one time. I don't remember where we were traveling to, but my husband has a big manly beard, and
Hmm.
he uses beard oil, and he didn't bring his beard oil, so he was fighting for his life. And actually, you know what, we found it in Italy, and that's where it was, and because his beard was all crazy, and there was a Lush in Italy, and I said, "We're going in." And so we did, and we found him this really nice moisturizer for his face and his beard in Lush, and he still uses it because it's so well made that you just need like a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
I love Lush. Now I
Yeah.
want to go. I think my closest one that I have here, it might maybe I have one in Victoria Gardens, but I think the closest one is like 2 hours away from me. It's probably
Hmm.
safe. I'm gonna look it up right now because now I want to go to Lush. I actually got a brand new bathtub in my house because I couldn't take a bath in my other bathtub, and so I had to remodel the whole kitchen so I could use my bath bombs.
Wow. So yeah, I like baths too, but I always take a shower after a bath.
Me too. Oh, I do too.
Yeah, because I the minute it gets hotter, like even with my hot tub, it drives my wife crazy because she likes, and my daughter, they like it like at 100, 102 degrees. I keep it right at 98.
Oh,
Any hotter, any hotter, I start sweating, and I
mhm,
hate sweating, in a place where you're supposed to be clean. I just feel so uncomfortable, so
mm,
yeah, it's definitely, I will take a shower after I take a bath. I like a good bath, but I
I do.
need it. But I know some people just, they bath and go. I'm like, oh wow, how do you? I mean, what happens to the grime, right? You're washing your stuff
Mhm.
off, but it doesn't just go away. It'll stay there if you don't, so,
Right, right.
you know.
Uh, I just really I don't know. Now I want to take a bath. I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. I'm like you, but I like to sweat in there. I liked sorry, I have one in Ontario. Didn't know. Ontario Mills. Ontario
Oh,
Mills Mall.
Ontario
Here I
Mills has
come.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I love Lush. It's just good stuff. That's all. That's all and I'm gonna say that the service is always immaculate there. Um, but no, I do like the bath, but I do take a shower. I do take a shower afterwards. And honestly, I feel like I haven't been a bath person for a while. Just because that used to be kind of my escape. That's probably the Calgon take me away. Because when my kids were all home, that was like the only time I could really get time for just myself where nobody was going to bother me. So I'm like,
hmm
I'm going to go take a bath. And I would refill that probably like 4 times because when the water gets cold, I add more hot water to it, drain some and put some hot water in it. I come out all pruny and stuff, and then you have to, of course, shower afterwards. But I can't even think the last time I took a bath. I do get to the hot tub and I like to get in the pool, but I don't think that I've taken a bath anytime. I think and as a matter of fact, that whole bathroom that we remodeled to have the bathtub, I think
hmm
I've taken a bath in that maybe twice in 5 years. Oops.
yeah.
I just want to
Well,
know it's there. I want to know I have the option. You know what I mean? I just want to know I have the option. So,
we love
oh
our
well.
house, but the one issue we have is that we don't have a bathtub in our master, and
Mm,
so the bathtub is in our kids' bathroom, which doesn't really do us any, you
right,
know,
right, right.
so and it used to be when she would travel with me, when I would go teach classes, we'd always make sure there was a bathtub in the hotel, and that'd be her time to bath
Relax.
bomb and
Yeah.
relax and shave and all those wonderful things, but yeah, it was definitely different. But just getting back to the idea of being in person, right? It just, I wonder, are people more used to it, or just because of necessity, or they found their niche? But I think one of the things, like that's kind of coming to my mind that's really important. I don't know how much we've talked about this, is just the idea of being comfortable. We just had this conversation. We were in a meeting before this, and just about public speaking, right? And we're Tiff and I are being asked to MC a conference, here in the area, and we're working out the details on it right now. And one of the things they wanted to do was have some folks have give their personal testimonies, right? Their personal stories, and so having them be comfortable in front of 500 people, right? Which You know, I find myself being more comfortable in front of 500 people than five. Right? But but it's not something that is necessarily, natural. And I don't know, Tiff, how have you know, how do you feel when you are speaking in front of an audience in a crowd? What do you do? How have you become comfortable at it? Because you're excellent at it. You're a keynote and all those wonderful things that we do. So how have you come to that?
I think like for me, because can I just be honest with you? I'm not naturally a good public speaker. It's something I actually struggled with most of my life, even from like elementary school and middle school. Anytime I had to do a speech, oh, I would just get in my own head. So I think the shift for me, what made it easy for me is that I just really run it like a conversation. And I don't talk at people, I talk with people. Like I feel like I try to have like a meaningful conversation. So, there's always preparation that goes into it depending on, what your topic is. If you're giving a keynote speech, the keynote speeches aren't necessarily intended to be incredibly interactive, and you're not going to necessarily be having a dialogue with 500 people. But I do feel like the way that I've gotten comfortable with it is just I just treat it like I'm having a conversation with a good friend. And so I try not to be too preachy. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a teach. I am a kind of sometimes a teacher, but I always treat my audience like we're equals and we're just having a conversation. So that makes it really easy for me to feel comfortable. The other thing, if I'm in person, is that I try to find a few people in the crowd that are like
Yeah.
super excited, that are like hanging on. Like I try to avoid the people who are like, making faces or unhappy. Like I try not to give them much energy. I really try to connect with everyone, but if I'm feeling nervous or I'm feeling um, like I need some energy, I try to find one of those people who are really into it. And there's always at least one, can I just say,
Yeah.
even in a crowd of people who maybe are forced to be there, they're hostages of their organization, there's always going to be at least one or two who are really vibing with you. And so um, I think the mindset shift for me, because I don't know, it's really weird. And this maybe goes with like a deeper issue. Maybe I need to work this out with my therapist. But I think most people have like some level of imposter syndrome, right? And so for me, as much of a confident person as I am, um, like sometimes I get in my head, like I'm giving keynote speeches. And so for other people, that might feel like incredibly impressive. And for me, I'm like, why would they pick me to do a keynote speech? Right? Like, what were they thinking? Like, what do I have to say? What do I have to share that would be like worth listening to? And that's where I have to get out of my own head and really think about, like, I've been given this time and given this opportunity to make an impact or to maybe shed light or turn on a light bulb or help somebody find their way through the dark. Like, what could I say or what could I do that would be worth their time? And that's I think how I plan most of my speeches or conversations or even trainings. Like, what would be worth somebody's time? What would make their life better, not worse? And can I do it in a way that's like practical? It's not just um, here's all this data and here's all this research and here's all this evidence, which that part's important, but really like making an opportunity for people to think about, okay, now you've thought about it, like maybe some background, but what does this mean to you? And now what do you want to do with that? Like, what's the next step? And so even in keynote speeches, there's always this opportunity I like to create for, now what are you going to do with this information? How can you think about this in a way that will make your life better, make your work better, or whatever it is better? And that's kind of like where I like to leave them on, is thinking about action. And so I don't know, sometimes it's very intentional and sometimes I just talk. I think some of my best speeches have been like in the moment, organic, just I'm getting the energy and I go with it. Uh, I did a, I get hired a lot for like employee appreciation events. And I think part of that's because my brand is a bit of like positivity and, joy um, and I live my life that way. So it makes sense. But I get a lot of employee appreciation events. And I remember one, I was only scheduled to be there for like 10 minutes. I only had like a 10-minute thing. And so I was doing my 10 minutes and then I looking to hand the microphone off to the next person and they're like, they're not here. Stall. So I've got like 450 people looking at me. And by the way, this was really kind of fun because they did like a masquerade ball for this employee appreciation event. So everybody's in like ball gowns and, like the masquerade masks. And I was like, let's do it. So I just ad-libbed and went off on this tangent for like the next 20 minutes. And we just had so much fun with it. And, I feel like it's just like, just talk to people. Don't talk at them. Just have a conversation. That was a long-winded story to get to that point, but that's how I kind of get over the jitters of it. You just talk to people.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the idea of that imposter syndrome. I mean, it's totally true. I mean, there's always that little bit of, you know, wow, how did I get here, right? Type of thing. And you just I mean, after doing this for almost 20 years, you just have to trust the fact that somebody up there likes you, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing a I'm doing a class for, a state agency tomorrow where it's a lot of folks are, you know, level three managers and above in state service, which is, pretty high up there. And they keep asking me to come back every year and teach these classes, and I keep getting these positive results. And so I've stopped doubting the fact that it's going to be good, and it's saying it's going to work out. It's not going to suck. I mean, the other ones haven't sucked before, and what is it that worked, and how do we make sure that it doesn't suck? And so, yeah, just having that healthy mix of information and but practical information. I want people, like you said, I want people to leave with something that they can use. I don't want to waste their time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, how are you going to use this tomorrow, right? What are you going to say to people that's gonna impact them? What are you going to do that's going to impact them in a way that that okay, so this conversation um, wasn't a waste of your time, and so I
Yeah.
really want to focus on that and make sure that I have an endpoint where it comes to that. And just like you said, just being human and talking to people, and making eye contact. Like you mentioned, there's always one or two people that are doing
Mm-hmm.
this, right? And
Always.
and I've gotten to the point where I try to see those people that are like this or with that skeptical looking, okay, how do I win them over? Right. I already got the head nodders, right? I can always come back to the head nodders if I'm starting to think, okay, is this going south? Right.
Right.
But just, what is it that, people are looking for? Some people, they want that intellectual competence, right? Do you know what you're talking about? Do you know the the jargon, the acronyms? Do you know our job? How long have you been there? What's your experience, right? And where'd you get that quote and all those other things? And then other people, the other half of us, if you believe the Myers-Briggs Foundation, is do you know how to connect with people? Yeah, you know all the bells and whistles and all the jargon, but so does a computer, right? So how do you connect? How do you ask those questions? How do you make those statements that help people, in a positive way, in a way that's influencing, engaging, and connects with people? I mean, you can ChatGPT can give you interview answers, but can it give you the inflections? Can it help you with the eye contact that you need in a specific moment, right? To make a difference. I remember I always talk about one of my favorite managers, right? She's retired now, Virginia Outerkirk, right? And if you're listening, hi Jenny, we miss you. She's out in Florida enjoying herself. She retired a program director with Kern County, and she was my first supervisor in human services. And I had an interview with her and I got the job, or I got connected into that job through my friend who I needed. I was the Air Force Base. I was working at Edwards Air Force Base and my term was over. It was a 5-year term. And um, I wanted to become permanent, but there was 3 people that were overseas that had dibs on my job. And so whether I liked it or not, there's somebody coming from Germany or Okinawa, right? And so I needed a job. Somebody who worked for me at the Air Force Base was working for the county, introduced me to his boss because he was moving over to child welfare. And so, he kept saying, "Oh, she's excited to meet you. She can't wait to meet you. And she's interested and wants to hear your story." And so I meet with her and her coworker, Chris Sellis, who's another gem. She was a site manager in Ridgecrest, way out near Death Valley. And they were both there. And they're asking me questions and I'm answering and I'm trying to be engaging and I'm looking for that eye contact and I'm getting it from Chris. Chris is right, and all that. And Virginia's just sitting there like this. And I thought I bombed that interview, right? I just didn't. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to get hired. What am I going to do? I need to find another job. Where's another job like this out in the desert? You know, I started panicking a little bit, even though I kept looking at Chris and she kept making me feel like I was on the right track. Anyways, I got the job, but they asked me at the end, "Do you have any questions?" And I almost wanted to ask, "Yeah, is Ridgecrest hiring? Because we might be a good fit." But I didn't get a good job, and that's just who she was, right? And the reason I always say she's somebody I admire, and is that she was consistent with everybody. That's who she was. She
Right.
wasn't super demonstrative. She wasn't always going to let you. Her face was not always going to tell you how she's feeling about things, and she was super fair all the time. And so it was. Um, it was an experience that I learned that was really helpful for me getting into leadership for in other jobs. And but yeah, she wasn't gonna. A lot of people aren't going to tell you how they're feeling, right? And so connecting with that one person, okay, I'm on the right track. I don't have to walk off this stage and wait for someone to grab the hook and pull me off, right? But yeah, so it's definitely challenging, and I think a lot of people go into that with that idea of public speaking being the number one fear, and you hear that, right? But
Right.
I said, well, what's behind the number one fear of being public speaking? What do you think causes that fear? Because you got to go behind, right, to get to that piece. What do you think what is the number one reason why people are afraid of public speaking?
I feel like I'm not doing this based on any research, just what I'm assuming here is that they just don't want to say the wrong thing and make a fool out of themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, let's just face it, right? One of the reasons like I quit social media is because even if you want to post something, you're now opening yourself up to everybody's comments. And so you might be like, oh, I have this great thought. And then 14 people are like, you suck, jump off a bridge somewhere,
Yeah.
like, how could you? And there's like this, I teach a presentation class about public speaking and, like the jitters are normal. I do it professionally and I always get a little bit nervous before a
Hmm.
presentation, right? Some more than others. They're if I know the audience and I know the topic, it's usually I'm pretty easygoing. But if I don't know the audience, or maybe it's my first time presenting a particular topic, I might be like, oh, how's this going to land? Is this going to work for this group? So I get the little jitters, but um, like part of what I want people to not fear is that for the most part, even if you're a bit nervous, your audience like will know that they'll forgive you. and and like I know for me, like where I really struggled in the beginning with public speaking is over preparation, where I kind of felt like I had to have a script for everything that I was going to say, and that if I missed a point or forgot a part or didn't say like the really clever thing I had thought of, that oh my gosh, I should have said this, I could have, should have, would have. And the thing that you have to remember is that nobody knew what you were going to say. Like
Hmm.
nobody knew that you messed up. Nobody really knows that you forgot like this really cool thing that you wanted to bring up. And that honestly most of the time they don't care. What what audiences care about is, um, are you sharing something with them that's important to them, right? So, does it connect with them in any way, shape, or form? If I go to a talk on how to change the oil in my car, I'm not necessarily interested in that because it's probably something I'm never going to do. So while you're talking about, what weight of oil to put in your car, I'm making my shopping list for Costco. I'm not interested. Um, so is it meaningful to the audience? Are you speaking to them in a way that's inclusive, meaning like, are you using language that's appropriate? Are you using vocabulary that's understandable, that's memorable? Do you create emotional connections, or are you just spouting out facts? Those are things that you think about in these presentations. And thanks to Nora, right? Nora gave like the what, the so what, the now what. That's always something that I'm thinking about, in terms of like, what do I want to share with people? Why is this important to them? Why should they care about it? And then what do you want them to do with this information? Those are things that I think are now so ingrained in the way that, it's not even, I think, intentional anymore because it's just practice. And so when I'm asking people who are looking to learn public speaking, is that you were chosen to speak for a reason. They picked you because you have something to say that is valuable to this audience, right? Because by the way, most of us don't just public speakers. We don't just like in the town square saying this is a great place to talk to people. Most of the time you're hired, they ask you like, or you have to make a proposal to say, I'd like to speak at this event and here's what I would say. You have to have expertise in that area, or there's a lot that goes behind the scenes before people show up and make speeches. And so when you're chosen, that's like the thing I want people who are afraid to keep in mind, is that they chose you for a reason because you have something to say. And so what do you want people to hear? What message do you want to send, and why should they care about it? What do you want them to do with it? And if you can think about it in those terms, it makes for a better conversation. And that's, again, it comes back to this idea that it's a conversation. And if you've got maybe 5, 10, 20 people in your audience, it could be a potential dialogue where it's a little bit of give and take, where you share something, they share something, and you have a conversation. Definitely not as easy to do with a group of 500. But I think and like one of the techniques that I teach, when you do sometimes get lost, or you get stuck, or you're not sure where you're going, or you had your plan and now you kind of deviated and you need time to get back, to not like get in your own head, but maybe give the audience a rhetorical question, or give them something to chat about for just a minute with somebody who's sitting next to them, to give them a job to do in that time that you need to kind of refocus and find where you're at, without like, oh my gosh, I forgot what I would like. You don't have to narrate all of, of which,
Yeah,
like, I just forgot what I was talking about. Give me a second. I need to find where I'm at in my notes. Like, we don't want to hear all of that, but you could easily just to say is, what, we've been talking for about 20 minutes now. Turn to somebody next to you and have a quick conversation about what stood out so far, or what light bulbs have gone off, or whatever you want to say. And again, you give them a couple minutes, you come right back. It's no big deal.
yeah,
So
yeah. People want to be involved in their own learning, right? That's adult
yeah,
learning theory, right?
yeah,
Adults want to
okay,
be involved in their own learning, and they can learn from the person standing up in front, or they can learn from the person sitting next to them, or they can process something that you said and come to a realization themselves based off their own expertise and knowledge. And all of those
hmm,
things are super valid and important parts of the process. So we don't, if you're thinking that you are, coming up with your presentation has to be the be all end all, or, the newfound thing that is going to save the world. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And there's different perspectives in how people share it, and different perspectives in how people have heard it. right? And so that's the important piece. How do we help people to hear and share things that create that transfer of learning, right? And like you said, there's all these talking points. There's all these. I remember when I first started I I still have my first handout that I created for UC Davis class, and it is a 55-page handout. No PowerPoint, just 55 pages of reading and activities. And I went through in an 8 hour, in a 7 hour class, I went through every single freaking page, right? And, but I was speaking at 100 miles an hour, was super nervous, super jacked. And people said that they liked it too, right? Which, made me really think about, well, did they like it or did they what did they get from it? Did I, maybe being engaging and trying to be funny, even though I'm not successful all the time. Maybe that's something that, you know, um, they like, maybe they like me, but what are they getting out of what we're trying to talk about? What is the end point? What are the objectives? Are we meeting the objectives? And that's something, like you said, people aren't necessarily always, people don't know what they don't know, right? And so if you have an agenda, if you have something that you want to hit, but then you miss it or you don't include it or you forget it or you run out of time, most people, like you said, they're going to be forgiving because they didn't. The only reason that's going to be pointed out to them is if you point it out, right?
Right.
I am sorry, we were going to talk about all this other good stuff, but we just ran out of time. Oh, so how do we make sure people feel like they got something out of what it is that we're providing them? And what are some recourses if there's something else? Hey, this is a section, but I'm teaching you guys again next month. We'll cover this, right? So, but if it's nothing, people know what you tell them as a presenter, as a keynote speaker, right? And so if you are sweating, people are going to sweat. They're going to feel your energy, right? And so that connection, that relaxation, even if you're not relaxed, that feeling of relaxation really can make a difference with, the message that you are sending and what you want people to take away from it. And like having those conversations. Yeah. So, hey, look at your partner and just have a 30-second conversation about, where do you see this? Right. And so and with 500 people it's kind of hard, so to debrief, but say, so maybe we have an idea in our head. How many people said this, right? And just people raise their head, whatever it is. That participation is so important. That's what keeps people from creating their Costco lists. And you know what? If some people are creating their Costco lists, maybe that's how they're listening, right? I mean, we were taught in school not to doodle, right? But we know adult learning theory that adults doodle. And if they're doodling, it's usually that means they're paying attention, right? And so how do we give them squishy toys and other things, those fidget spinners and all those other things that are helping them to release that energy and at the same time be able to pay attention to what you're doing, activities, right? And what else did you put in a keynote? How do we keep their attention, just make it so that it means something to them?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the important part about public speaking is it's not about like you as the speaker, you have a message to share, but at the end of the day, what you're hoping for is that the people in the audience walk away with something impactful.
Yeah.
And I think my success as a public speaker is not because I'm like this well articulated orator, if that's even the word. I can't even say the word
That's
intentional without saying intentionable. So it's not that I'm like this immaculate, grasp the language, and I have this beauty to my prose. Uh, I think the magic of my style of public speaking is that I'm just incredibly authentic and genuine.
yeah.
And I share a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I don't stand up in front of people pretending to be some expert and that you should listen to me because I know all this stuff. I usually say, here's how bad I've sucked in my previous life. Here's all of the ways I've gotten it wrong. Here's all of the things that didn't make sense. And here's what I've learned, and here's how I've adapted. And I just want to share that with you. And I don't really force people to drink the Kool-Aid. It's just like I'm offering this to you as a gift. And if you want the gift, great. And if you don't want the gift, that's okay too. And so I really go in, and I'll say I keep my expectations low, so I'm never disappointed. I don't go in like with the intent to razzle dazzle every person in the room because um, I would fail every single time. My goal is always like if one person gets one thing that makes their life better, then I did my job. And so I'm really fortunate that I have the type of personality that people do come and talk to me and are vulnerable and they share things with me. And I get a lot of that like reassurance that their time was not wasted and that things have been meaningful for them. And that to me is like the biggest compliment as a speaker is when somebody says, you said something and it really resonated with me, then I that builds my confidence, right? And trust and believe people also will come up to you and say, when you said this, what about this? Like people will come and argue with you about whatever, and you have to be gracious in those because they have a perspective that's just as valid as the one that you have. And you just take it with a grain of salt and think, can I do better or not do better? Um, what can you do? What can you do? But I don't let those eat away at the times that I've let them eat away at me is because I this person like really was so moved in the wrong direction by what I said that I really wanted to be introspective and be like, oh my gosh, like that was the opposite of my goal.
Yeah.
um, like how could I have done this better for that person? Because that's not the message that I wanted them to receive, but that's what they received. And so I have an obligation as the sender to maybe rework that and say it in a different way so that it can be more receivable. And so that's one thing as a public speaker as well is that you get a lot of feedback, both good and bad, and both are valuable. Like obviously if someone's like, "Oh my God, you're amazing, best speech I've ever heard." You're like, "Yeah, just all in a day's work. Thank you so much." But you also want to take into the consideration those people who maybe didn't get what you wanted them to get out of it and really think about how do I improve and how do I become more inclusive because their opinion matters. Um, you just can't lose sleep over it because let's just be honest. I think what's the statistic? 2.5 people hate everything anyways. No matter 2.5% of people hate everything no matter what you do. So sometimes you just have to take that with a grain of salt and say thank you for your feedback and move on with your life. You'll never please everybody.